I wasn't planning to film, but the past few weeks I've been going down my rabbit hole of music I used to listen to and the way that I used to listen to it, and it's just been hitting the nostalgia heavily from middle school and high school. And today, when I was going down that journey, I was really thinking about the place that I was at, especially in high school, and that place of darkness and despair. I guess I don't really think about where I'm at now in comparison to where I was because emotions, heaviness, that stuff doesn't ever go away. But I was thinking about certain behaviors and certain patterns that I used to definitely have that I felt stuck in and identified by, and like I could never get out of it. So it just got me thinking about the idea of shadow work, the dark night of the soul, going down that path of solitude and heaviness and depression, knowing that it's important to discover the darker aspects of yourself, but it's equally important to come to the light. Sometimes, especially on social media, I do see that push for embracing your darker sides, but I also see a lot of people getting stuck in that. And as someone who was stuck in that, especially as a teenager, I did want to talk about that because I did and still do, especially with PMDD in certain parts of the month, really hit that wall of this is the side of myself that I need to embrace. But how do you not get stuck in that? How do you not get overcome by those darker aspects of the self? And it's something that I still explore moment to moment, but I've found ways to be a little bit more present with it, integrate it a little bit more in a way where I'm really understanding the wisdom of it while still not being in my head to where this darkness is defining my reality. So I will be talking about self-harm a little bit, depression, and if that any of that is triggering, this is my disclaimer now. Please feel free to click out the video, take pauses, check in with yourself, breathe. I hope that at the very least it can allow you to feel heard, seen, validated. So one thing I will acknowledge about myself is I've never been addicted to any substances. I don't really have any urge to do substances like that. It's something that hasn't really called me because I've talked about this in previous videos, but as someone who's dealt with a lot of dissociation, substances tend to urge you to escape, and for me, my whole goal is getting back in the body. And I think that is where self-harm started coming into play and into practice. So self-harm takes on a few different forms. For me, it has been through cutting, it has been through eating disorders, it has been through reckless behavior in terms of like, I'm just gonna go for a walk at this wee hour of the morning, or I'm maybe not gonna walk on the sidewalk, and behaviors that aren't directly seen as self-harm, but they're through those intentions and that mentality. So starting with the very, very direct one of cutting. I started cutting in middle school, but it didn't really get to be something that I can now call an addiction looking back until high school. It's something that I had to do every day for a period of my life, and I have had so many different relationships with self-harm. At one point it was in order to prove a point to my body or in order to prove hatred to myself, for myself. It was a very self-sabotaging, out of hate act. And then at other points, it's been to come back to my body. It's been this act of like, I'm so dissociated or I have so many emotions going through me and I need a release. And it's not coming through that mentality of hatred. It's coming through this urgency and this need to come back to myself. I do want to pause here real quickly and say that this is not me encouraging self-harm in any sort of way. I want to lay that out. I want to emphasize that part. And so if I'm recalling my experiences and my reflections and my relationship with self-harming at points in my life, I'm not glorifying it. I'm not saying that this is the way. I'm saying that for me, when I think about why I did certain things, this is what was going through my head then. And this is what still pops up from time to time in my mind, and things and urges that I have to still work through. And I feel like as someone who has been in that position for 10 years of being like low-key addicted to it, getting to the other side and being in the space where that's not me anymore, but I still have those urges. So it's like I'm not just on this other side of peace and light. It's no, I still work through this stuff, but I know how to work through it a lot better than I once did, and it's still something that I have to literally fight. And there's this place of acceptance within myself that I might have to keep fighting, but I'm okay with that because I trust myself and I know my intentions with myself and my body, and I fully feel comfortable in my ability to intervene. And it sounds crazy to say because it's like, Aisha, this is your own self. But especially during those PMDD times, and I have other PMDD videos where I talk about what that experience is like and how it feels like there's a whole thing within you. And I'll get into this because this is talking about that darker energy and the duality, quote unquote, of those forces, when honestly I don't even like using the word duality because it's the same energy just reconfigured. But again, have videos on all that, and I will get back to the point now. So in high school, it was a bit more of an addiction. It was out of self-hatred. It was out of trying to just get myself back in my body at points. It was something that I think I just integrated somehow into a routine. It was an act at one point that I knew was bad, but I needed to do it. And then at other points of my life with self-harming, I couldn't understand why it was wrong because there wasn't an ill intention behind it. And I knew it wasn't the best thing, but I'm like, I don't know how to get it to stop because this is the only thing that's working for me. And if that sounds insane to you to say or to hear, I feel uncomfortable saying that. And this is just my honest, vulnerable reflection on my relationship with self-harming. So I don't know what to tell you. There's also that notion of people saying that self-harm is a cry for help, but honestly for me initially it wasn't even that, because I started out self-harming under my breasts, like to make sure no one could see it, and lo and behold an ex of mine saw it and was like, oh my god, you are crazy. Number one, I think the reaction to certain behaviors brought on a lot of shame to try to keep it closeted, but at some point I think I just reached that point of I don't care. This isn't even a cry for help. This is me literally just doing what I know to do in the moment. And when I did start self-harming in more obvious places like my arms and my thighs, it was me just coping. It really wasn't a cry for help. But in other points in my life, I can acknowledge when it was a cry for help and this inability to communicate in the heat of a moment, and like I don't know what else to do except this. Like I don't know how to talk to you, I don't know how to feel seen, I don't know how to reach you and allow you to feel seen. Obviously self-harming is not a method of communication, but it's that overwhelming need to express and that inability to be grounded enough and present enough and centered and connected enough to my own sense of expression to verbalize, or not even a sense of expression, I think it's sense of safety. I think that there are a lot of connections I see within myself of self-harming and lack of safety within my body. And if you've seen any of my videos, you know that the safety in the body is key to unlocking everything, because life is going to get hard. Life has so many unfamiliar aspects, so many unknowns, and the way you move through those, especially in times of discomfort, is through coming back to the safety you experience in your own body, because you can feel unsafe in the outside world, but you're not going to be able to receive safety externally if you can't find that internally. And so in some twisted way, this ability to go into that dark place allowed me to find comfort and solace within my own self, because it was a little less scary when I found comfort in the darkness. Now, pause. I think that at times it is easier to sink down low and make peace with the darkness than it is to make friends with the light. I think that a lot of us are so comfortable, or a lot more comfortable being in the dark. And so when it comes to this encouragement of embracing your darker sides, especially for women, I feel like there's this movement of embracing your darkness. I think that sometimes we forget to keep it at a certain level. It's uncomfortable to go to the dark places within yourself and learn the wisdom of what that is telling you, because that requires solitude. It requires presence with yourself. It requires moving through without it overtaking you. And that is the key, because it's easy for us to sink all the way, but it's hard for us to stay afloat enough to gain the wisdom and the knowledge and the self-experience, the experiencing of the self and self-awareness. and then ascend back up and then come back up to these lighter places, these higher vibrations. Integrating those darker places with higher vibrations is difficult. It's not easy. It requires you to find safety in your own discomfort, but not find safety within this external discomfort, if that makes any sense. And so I think that these periods of heaviness, of self-harm, these places where I'm really abusing myself and neglecting myself, I have experienced two ends of going to those places and letting myself start to sink and start hitting rock bottom where I'm like, I can't. And then I've experienced what it means to be present with that and knowing that my goal is to feel what I'm feeling, but simultaneously adjusting every moment to see how I can come back to alignment. And that's a very complicated thing to express and to teach someone because it's not something you can be taught. It's something that you have to choose for yourself. You have to choose if you allow yourself to feel and embrace all of the heaviness and darkness that you are feeling and then choose alignment. You can feel and embrace the darkness and heaviness and then choose not to be in alignment. And I think that sometimes that's a lot easier. Or you can choose to just try to keep it at the surface level happiness and everything's good and life is great, but not choose to look at the depths of that and the layers and that quote unquote darkness and do that shadow work. So it's a teeter-totter. Like life is a constant going to the side, oops, too far, I need to go back to the side. But it's not that we stay uneven and imbalanced forever and ever and ever and ever. And you can make friends with the darkness, you can make peace in the dark, but remember that you're finding peace within yourself in your own discomfort, not peace and surrender to the external discomfort when you're not connected internally. I'm definitely not about encouraging toxic positivity or trying to remain positive in every moment. I think that I'm a very optimistic person, but I think my optimism comes from the fact that I've really faced a lot of my own heaviness and I've gone to those places of sinking really, really low, but understanding the fine line of self-absorption in a positive way to where I'm present with myself and just disconnecting from life around me. I think it's naive to think that life is only higher vibrations and only good, and I think that beliefs do control your reality. So if you believe in demonic forces all the time everywhere, that is what you're going to be more present to, but just ignoring the fact that that stuff does exist isn't really taking the totality of life in my opinion. And again, that's a fine line of knowing when you are letting it consume you and you're attaching yourself or letting it attach to you versus just being present, aware, and acknowledging what is. It's a lot more powerful and again, a lot more difficult to be aware of all these other things and not engage. Curiosity does not mean you connect with it. And also, you don't have to be curious about every little thing. If there's something that feels weird in your body, you don't have to be curious about engaging it. That's where the power of intuition is really important, because when you're navigating this path of shadow work and all of the lower forces around you, within you, you have to learn, which sometimes is trial and error, sometimes it's going through experiences. It's the journey I've taken of self-harming, abuse, negligence, paralysis within my body, not being able to move, not being able to speak and vocalize. It's the journey of experiencing that and then figuring out what you need, especially through your intuition, to not come out of it necessarily, because the goal should never be to resist and get to another place, but to find yourself within those moments. That's really what this is all about, is how can you connect to yourself, connect to all of yourself, not just when you're in a dark place, I'm connecting to my darkness. It's how can you transmute that? It doesn't even need to be an intentional direct thing that you're working towards when it comes to transformation and transmutation, but how can I embrace all parts of myself, the darkness and the light within that, or the heaviness and the connection to my own alignment. Alignment is always going to be where you need to be. So I can't really explain vibrationally what that means, because alignment doesn't always look like a place of complete joy. It can be utter chaos, but you're connected to yourself. But what does that place of connection to yourself look like? Because when you're connected to yourself in those heavy moments, you're learning the lessons and the wisdom of the darker forces, and you're embracing yourself, you're accepting yourself. That's the place where you find self-acceptance, in the places that you might resist initially, or the places where society has shamed or you have shamed as a result. But it's finding that connection and acceptance in those moments where it's kind of the hardest to feel that and find that. And then that eventually starts moving you to where you need to be, whether it is to a place of joy, whether it is to a place of forgiveness, to those higher vibrations. But you can't force that without doing the work. You can't force that without embracing the journey and embracing where you're led. But you can't let that consume you, because then that's not going to really take you to where you need to be. When it comes to our energetic bodies, we match whatever vibration we are emitting or feeling. If we're very connected or drawn to this darker vibration, if we're connected to this feeling of sad, then that's going to conjure up sad thoughts. It's going to conjure up that same equivalent vibration. But you can experience sadness, as I think humans need to. We have to experience and feel these quote unquote lower vibrations, but we don't have to identify with them. And I think that's the key difference. Is it's not wrong to go down to these lower places, but it's not about staying there. It's not about integrating with that. I think that my takeaway from this, as I wrap this video up, is that I want you to give yourself permission to feel, and give yourself permission to embrace the journey, especially the path of most resistance that some of us take, where we decided to learn all the lessons and experience all the things and all the heaviness, and go on the path of trial and error, rather than just, I'm told this and I'm going to do this, and yep, this led me to the right path. I think that there's so much wisdom that you gain from going down that path and experiencing the totality and the whole picture of emotions, of energy, of forces. But don't feel like you need to get stuck in anything. Don't feel like you experiencing or feeling something means that you're sinking to that. It doesn't mean run away from it. It doesn't mean don't sit in that discomfort. It means, how can you allow yourself to feel and explore without connecting in a way that identifies you with that, or identifies that with you. Use your discernment on when to be curious. Use your empowerment on knowing that you can make it out if you do fall into this curiosity and suddenly you do find yourself in a place you didn't want to get into. Allow yourself to experience and embrace those little high moments and those periods of connection, and when you're just feeling like you're high on life. Because for me, that awareness of these places that I can go to help me out of the lower places, because I know what feels good. I know what alignment feels like, and I know that I can get there. But sometimes I have to go all the way down here in order to come back up, and sometimes I don't need to do that. And it's a game and a process of learning your intuition. It's a muscle you strengthen. It's not something that you need to know right away. It's not something that you have to automatically have connection with. But when you do experience those moments of alignment and love, alignment and joy, allow yourself to really feel what that feels like, because it feels good. And sometimes for me, I just need to remember that I like feeling that way. And it is a lot easier to feel the opposite sometimes. And that can be comfort zone to a degree. But allow yourself to receive what it means to feel good and feel in alignment and joy and connection. So I appreciate you listening to this impromptu, and I don't know what my next video is going to be, but I will see you there when I do. Bye.